If you've ever read Revelation before, beginning to end, you'll remember the 7 bowls of wrath that 7 angels pour out on the world. Because it's in the book of Revelation, we treat the resulting curses as strange, new things. But the truth is that we've seen all this before. Indeed, almost from the very beginning of the biblical story itself. If you can put off the histrionics that too often surround Revelation, the curses sound suspiciously like the plagues in Egypt. And indeed, that is exactly what we are meant to remember as the curses unfold. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your Daily Devotional for Monday, November 15th, 2021. When God instructed Moses to go before Pharaoh and say to Pharaoh, "Let my people go," God would inflict a plague on the Egyptians, after which Pharaoh's heart would be hardened by God, making way for yet another plague and another plea by Moses to let the people go. Finally, after the 10th plague, the death of all the firstborn of Egypt, Pharaoh relented and let the Hebrews go. We already know that the Exodus story provides the pattern for John to interpret what God was planning to do for the Christian church in the late 1st century, that even though they were suffering from persecution, just as the Hebrews suffered under the yoke of slavery, God eventually saw to the Hebrews' release. John uses this pattern to assure his audience that just as God had acted to free the ancient Hebrews, God would also act to free the church from its oppression under the Romans. Understanding that this is the pattern of John's letter helps us interpret Revelation not as some wild-eyed predictions about the distant future, but as a letter of encouragement to get them through difficult times. The curses inflicted on the world in Revelation, although different in number, 7 in Revelation versus 10 in Exodus, are very similar in nature to the ones in Exodus. Let me read just a portion of Revelation 16. See if you can remember the plagues in Exodus as I read. "Then I heard a loud voice from the temple telling the 7 angels, 'Go and pour out on the earth the 7 bowls of the wrath of God.' So the first angel went and poured his bowl on the earth, and a foul and painful sore came on those who had the mark of the beast and who worshipped its image. The second angel poured his bowl into the sea, and it became like the blood of a corpse, and every living thing in the sea died. The third angel poured his bowl into the rivers and the springs of water, and they became blood. And so it goes. In Egypt, God inflicted painful boils, first on the cattle, then on the Egyptian people themselves. In Exodus, God turned the Nile River into blood. And so it goes. What we saw in Exodus, we now see reflected in Revelation. God sends painful sores on the people. God turns the sea to blood. So what are we seeing? Are we seeing predictions about actual events that will happen in the future? Are we seeing events that will happen to the Romans, just as the earlier plagues happened to the Egyptians? Are we perhaps seeing predictions about what will happen in some tumultuous time in the future when God brings history to a close? I hope that what you are seeing now is a vivid representation of the impending overthrow of Roman power, not by the church, not through war, but by God Himself. I hope what you are seeing is the pronouncement of divine justice about to be executed on behalf of a patient and long-suffering church. Because that's what it is. It is one more in a long series of reminders by John to the church that no matter how awful their present circumstances, God will vindicate them and free them from their Roman captivity, just as God had freed the Hebrews from their Egyptian captivity. This is not about the end of the world, but about the end of the church's oppression under Roman rule. John's audience would have understood immediately, and we have every reason to believe they took him at his word. For many in the church then suffered willingly and even submitting to death, rather than abandon the faith. When we return tomorrow, we'll take on the last two plagues, including one that includes that frightening reference to Armageddon. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.